How's it going, everyone? I hope everyone's had a great week so far and is having a lifted weekend. Shout out to D Squad for the suggestion for this video. We're going to talk a little bit about grow room safety, and I haven't seen it talked about too often, so we're going to jump right into it. Now, the first thing I would recommend to have is a fire extinguisher. Always have a fire extinguisher on hand in your grow space for the just in case, circumstances. This can be from hardware failure, improper electrical use, uh, just anything. It's better to have a fire extinguisher and not need it than to need it and not have it. So definitely have a fire extinguisher easily accessible to your location. Now, on top of that, it would be a really great idea to have, smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors installed in the area as well, because any place where you're working long periods of time, buildup of CO2 can happen, which is okay for the plants. They'll probably eat it all up, but may not be great for you. And then there'll be also a good idea to have, a smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector, because the carbon monoxide buildup isn't great for you or the plants. And obviously, if you have smoke going on, you're going to need to use that fire extinguisher. Now, let's get into a little bit about electrical safety. We did kind of, tap on that during the fire portion, but electrical safety is like a whole thing in of itself. But there are some good rules of thumb that you can use and, you know, remain pretty damn safe. First, you want to keep all electricity above your waist. This includes like plugging in your lights, plugging in fans, plugging in anything, humidifiers, dehumidifiers, anything that you possibly can think of. You want to have all your electricity above your waist. Because in the garden, we have lots of different humidity, water. You can spill the res, you can spill a bucket of water, you're going to be spraying stuff. And it's much better to keep all electricity higher up so that in case a spill or an accident does happen and the electrical cords aren't on the ground and you don't have the possibility of electrocuting yourself via the water conducting all the electricity. On top of that, it's good to have everything above the waist and cable managed on the walls or on the ceiling, or through the poles of your tent, so that you have less of a trip hazard slash, uh, running into the cord hazard. This is also a really good idea for irrigation lines and, anything that you're going to use to water your plants. It's a good idea to cable manage or manage those lines so that they're not a trip hazard. If at all possible, be able to put those lines on the wall and not on the floor, and then run those lines down to the plants. That's much safer. But in every step of the way, you want to make sure that you're doing things as safe as possible, because especially if you're building up a grow room or grow space that you're going to be using for the foreseeable future, you want to make sure that all the trip hazards, pointy edges on, supports or anything like that, sharp edges on fan blades and this, that. You want to make sure that you have the grills on the fans, all that kind of stuff, and remain as safe as possible, because you're going to be in and out of that room. And as soon as you get comfortable around a space that has, some dangerous items, some trip hazards, some, electrical hazards and whatnot, you don't feel it's as dangerous as it is, and accidents can happen. Now, when it comes to power strips and extension cords, you may think that you can just plug as many devices as you want into those devices. But as I was mentioning earlier, that amp rating is a very important number to determine if you can do that safely or not. Now, a good rule of thumb is that you never want to exceed 80% of the maximum allowed amp rating on any circuit or device. So if the power strip has a 10 amp rating, you would want to make sure that you're only using around 8 amps going through that power strip. Same goes if you have like a 15 amp circuit or a 20 amp circuit. You're going to want maybe 18 amps going through that circuit, or, 12 amps going through that circuit, to make sure that you're not running at the maximum of that circuit the wiring and the circuit itself remains cool, and you're actually running things more efficiently. Because if you run each and every single one of your circuits at 100% in your home, you will end up paying more money on the electric bill, obviously, but also the wiring may warm up and is not as great for your house and the wiring in your house. So that's why it's extremely important if you are building out a grow room to either consult an electrician or if you absolutely know what you're doing, because there are growers out there that are electricians, to properly wire up your grow space for what you're going to be using. Now, thankfully, with the advent of LEDs and lower power usage fans, because they're direct current fans instead of AC fans, and they're speed controlled fans, so they can use much less current and power. Uh, a lot of these things aren't necessarily a worry for a home grower that's growing a 4x4 tent or a 5x5 tent, a closet grow, things like that. Anytime you start getting into the multiple lights, needing large dehumidifiers, large humidifiers, portable AC units, things like that, where they're using 10 or 15 amps a piece, uh, those type situations, you'll probably want to bring in the electrical person in, have them wire up circuits, especially for your grow. But like I was saying, if you the regular 4x4 tent with a 700-watt light, some fans and whatnot, an exhaust fan, that can all be done on some regular home circuitry, and may even be all done on a single circuit. So that's a good first rule of thumb for electrical safety in the garden, by keeping your circuits at 80% of its maximum rating, whether it's through the circuit breaker, power strip, extension cord. Following these amp ratings will keep your grow safe, cool, and efficient. Speaking of cool and efficient, I want to give a huge shout out to Mars Hydro for sponsoring part of this video. Mars Hydro has tons of grow equipment in their product line, and their customer service and equipment keep improving over time. Here's the FC6500, a 730-watt bar-style light that gets a usable photon efficiency of 2.38, which is extremely great. This light is equipped with close to 5000K and 3000K full-spectrum white LEDs, as well as 660-nanometer Osram reds. The driver can also be installed either inside or outside the tent, and it comes with brackets for both. This is by far their best light, in my opinion. Their 5x5 tent has quality construction, and I appreciate the zipper flap that will prevent the light leaks when the zipper gets a little worn from use. And they also recently put out a fan filter controller combo that controls the exhaust fan via temp or humidity readings, which is super convenient. Once again, thanks Mars Hydro for sponsoring part of this video, and if you're looking for some grow equipment, check out Mars Hydro, link in the description, and make sure to use code Goblin510 to save at checkout. So some of you may be wondering, how do you figure out if you're using 80% of the maximum rating of your circuit, power strip, and or extension cord? Well, first off, the circuit on the circuit panel is going to tell you the amp rating that it can handle, and a tag or printed directly on the power strip or extension cord will tell you what the extension cord or power strip can handle. And the same goes for the equipment in the grow, your light, your fans, um, anything else, pumps, water pumps, anything else like that is going to have an wattage or amp rating written either directly on it or on a sticker for it. And what you can do is, for example, in a 4x4 tent, we'll take a light, a couple of fans, and an extraction fan into account. Uh, you got a 730-watt light that usually takes around 5 amps on 120 volts electricity. And then you got a couple of fans that, use 65 watts, around half an amp for maybe an intake and outtake fan. And then maybe you have a couple of fans for circulation fans, like clip-on fans. And those maybe use 30 to 45 watts at around 0.3 amps. And if you take all those things and add them up, it'll add up to around 8 to 9 amps for all of those devices, and that's, within the 80% range of the 10 or 15 amps that a decent extension cord or power strip can handle. And it's definitely within the bounds of the 20 amp rating of an electrical circuit. So, as a little recap, if you go through all the devices that you have in your garden and write down the amperage and add all those up, and if that's below the 80% of the max rating, you're good to go. Now, if it does not have an amp rating directly written on the device, you can use an amp calculator online. You can just type in amp calculator on Google, and it will ask you for the wattage and what electricity you're using. And for most of us, that's 120 volts here in the North America. Uh, Most places other in the world are using 220 or 240. But if you put in the voltage of what you're using and the wattage of what the device is using into the calculator, it will tell you the amount of amps that it's using. And then last but not least, the last tip for electrical safety is if the thing that you're plugging in has a ground plug, it's 3 prongs instead of 2, then I highly, highly, highly recommend that it's plugged into a grounded plug. There is a reason that it has a grounded plug, and that may be because the casing of the electrical device that you're using is metal and it needs to be grounded just in case a wire comes loose inside of it. There's lots of safety reasons why electrical devices come with ground plugs. And if it has a ground plug, it should be plugged in to a power strip or directly into the wall that has a ground, all 3 prongs, including the ground. Don't use a converter that takes, the ground and takes it to the 2 plugs and then plug it into an outlet that only has 2 prongs. That's much more dangerous, especially when we're talking about grow equipment that's using higher power and it's near water. That's kind of a no go. And in a perfect world, all the outlets and power that you would use inside your grow space would be GFCI outlets. That'd be ground fault interrupt outlets, just like there are in your kitchen and or in your bathroom where there's lots of water. Now, there's a ton more that can be said about setting up a grow space safely with electricity. And if you guys want to see a video strictly on that, let me know in the comments down below. But let's transition into some other topics about how to stay safe in the garden, including ventilation. Having proper ventilation in your garden is super important, not only for your health, but for the plant's health. Especially if you're a home grower, growing in a sealed environment is going to be quite hard to do, and it'd be much easier to have some fresh air exchange. It's much safer for the plants. It's much safer for you. And you don't have to worry about gases build up like CO2 or carbon monoxide because you're always exchanging fresh air into the room. And that will also keep your plants fed with CO2, even though the outdoor CO2 is around 420 to 450, 500 parts per million, depending on where you are in the world. Uh, Having that constant supply of that 400 or 500 ppm is, uh, in my opinion, nearly just as good as overfeeding the plant CO2. If you're in extreme commercial production and have a multi-million dollar facility and can grow in a sealed environment and have all the equipment to do so, you can get more efficiency out of your plants. But for the home grower, that's really not necessary or even much of a viable option unless this is really your hobby and you can spend tons and tons of money on building out your grow space. Having great ventilation is also good for pest and disease pressures as well as, buildup of mold. It'll help prevent mold by keeping excess humidity down. Even sealed grow rooms and high-end facilities have a way to extract their grow room within 5 minutes or less of all the air that's inside that grow room. They may not use it and they may not even use it ever, but they have that just in case. Because if CO2 gets a little too high or carbon monoxide gets a little too high and there's workers inside that grow space, That's not good. That's not good at all. It's not good for the plants either for carbon monoxide. So even sealed grow rooms have a way to ventilate their entire space very quickly if need be. But like I was saying, for us home growers, having a nice, steady, constant airflow exchange is good enough. 100% good enough. Now let's touch back on the cleanliness of the garden a little bit in the grow space. Keeping a clean grow space not only, like I said earlier, to keep the cables and irrigation lines and electrical lines up off the floor and away from trip hazards and electrical hazards. Keeping your space clean will prevent, pests, diseases, molds, bacterias from growing, messing with your plants, messing with your own health. So it's extremely important to keep a clean grow space, especially every after every harvest. Do a nice clean reset, clean with a strong cleaning agent, whether that's a natural cleaning agent or like a 10% bleach solution. But you really, really want to make sure that you clean your space well to keep, the bacteria, mold, pests, diseases down so they don't affect you or your plants. And a side benefit of keeping your equipment nice and clean and everything well maintained is that clean and well maintained equipment lasts much longer. Now, on the topic of cleaning, you should be using some personal protection gear in the garden, especially some sunglasses or some grow glasses, specifically made garden glasses. Because if you work for more than 20, 30 minutes in the garden with these extremely powerful lights, it can start to have an effect on your vision. So I highly, highly recommend using sunglasses, polarized sunglasses, or the specifically made grow glasses or garden glasses. On top of that, wearing gloves, masks, goggles, anything like that while mixing soils, creating lots of dust, using sprays, whether they're natural or not natural sprays, are a great idea. You don't want to get any of this stuff in your eyes. You don't want long exposure on your skin because even natural things can have a detrimental effect if you have a long term exposure. So it's just a good idea to have personal protection gear and to use everything in moderation, even the natural pesticides, insecticides, fungicides. Um, the one and only thing that won't really mess with a lot of things is a natural soap like a Dr. Bronner's or a Jadam wetting agent. The only thing that may do is dry out your skin and maybe dry out the plant as well if you spray the plant too often. And last but not least, keep all caustic chemicals and natural substances away from children, pets, and whatnot by storing them, in a cupboard, in a cool, dry space, sealed well. Follow all the instructions on any cleaning agents or, insecticides, pesticides, or anything like that on storage. Make sure that you store all of your chemicals and garden cleaning agents and everything like that well, because you don't want to have a poisoning incident with a pet or a child, and that's just a bad look altogether. So make sure you take care of your chemicals, keep your garden space clean, and store your things correctly, and you'll have a really great, safe time in the garden. Thanks for checking out the video, Green Gang. If you have any questions and you want to just chill and smoke, you can come visit me and Lantern over on Twitch. We like to play little video games. Come ask us any questions about growing. Or, like I said, if you just want to chill and smoke, we smoke sesh over there all the time. So come on by, and we'll see you on the next video, everybody. Peace.